Greetings everybody! We're going to talk about the 3 cognitive learning styles, and we will also include some information about children learning styles. But first things first, what is learning? Learning is the activity or process of gaining knowledge or skills by studying, practicing, being taught, or experiencing something. It is also an individualized process. Different education, the background experiences, the personality traits, and the levels of motivation affect the way we learn. Now, what is learning style? Learning styles refer to a general way people prefer to have information presented in order to solve problems, to learn, and to remember new information. Your learning style preference starts in your childhood. As I mentioned before, we're going to talk about visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learning styles. And also about children learning style.
The first cognitive learning style that we are going to talk about is the visual learning style. What does this consist of? First of all, they learn and remember best by seeing and visualizing information. They also prefer to process and learn information in visual forms, such as pictures, charts, or other printed information, such as lists or paragraphs. They can be divided by 2 subchannels, which is the visual linguistic, which is to comprehend better by written language, such as reading and writing tasks, or the visual spatial, which is to do better with charts, demonstrations, videos, and other visual materials. Up next, we have the characteristics, which are to recall information, as in numbers, words, phrases, or sentences. Then it's to understand information of pictures, charts, or diagrams. Also, have visual memory skills and have the ability to make movies in their minds while reading. They also have better visual and spatial skills, and they have good eye for colors, design, visual balance, and visual appeal. They can also pay close attention and learn to interpret body language, and they have a keen awareness of aesthetic, the beauty of the physical environment, and the visual media. They also have some really interesting learning strategies, which are to highlight important information, to create movies in your mind, to visualize graphic materials and short sections of printed information. They can create visual study tools, they can expand chapter mappings, they are very good at using colors and pictures, they can copy information with their own handwriting, they can create visual memory of answers, use their keen observation skills, and carry a pen and notepad with them.
Now we are going to talk about the second cognitive learning style, and it is auditory. It depends on hearing and speaking as a main way of learning. They use their listening and repeating skills to sort through the information that is sent to them. They may have difficulties with drawn instructions, but if the writing is in logical order, it can be easier to understand. Auditory learners must be able to hear what is being said in order to understand. Their characteristics are: they like to read to self out loud. They tend to be natural listeners. They are not afraid to speak in class. They like oral reports. They tend to speak slowly and explain things well. They follow spoken directions well. They can't keep quiet for long periods. They enjoy acting and being on stage. They are able to memorize lines for a skit easily. They are good in study groups. And finally, we have learning strategies. They should participate in discussions. Read out loud. Ask questions. Work with others. Recite frequently. Tape lectures. Make their own study tapes and flashcards. Explain information. Create rhymes, jingles, or songs. And finally, use technology.
Now we are going to talk about the kinesthetic learning style. This learning takes place by the students carrying out physical activities rather than listening to a lecture or watching demonstrations. These type of learners are commonly known as doers. Now we have the characteristics. First, these are recognized by active learners and they like to have breaks while studying. They speak with their hands and likes to do gestures to remember. They remember what is done rather than what was said or seen. They like to do dynamic activities to help them perceive and learn. They enjoy working with materials. And finally, they work better when it comes to physical expressions. Finally, we have the learning strategies for these kind of learners. First, they use hands-on learning. Then, they create manipulatives to learn better. They like to do dynamic charts and diagrams. They work better when using a computer because they can remember. They use the muscle of their memories. They do movements and gestures to learn better. And they learn better with action games, role plays, and songs or rhymes.
Next up is children's learning styles. This model is mostly identified by June Griswold, a classroom teacher for over 16 years, with the help of Pam Weinfellers. This model begins by explaining how the learning style is mostly permanent and done by biological potential. But what does this mean? This means that typically, the primitive way a child begins to learn is the way the child will always learn, but it could sometimes change a little. This means that the individual learning style we had as children could develop into a slightly different type of learning style. June Griswold believes that identifying learning styles and adapting lessons can motivate students and eliminate unfair labeling. It is very important to point out and understand that learning differences do not necessarily translate into learning disabilities. A child can have a mental health diagnosis and can be classified with a learning disability, but with the help of the parent and teacher, that child can still learn to work to their full learning potential. With this being said, it's also important to take into consideration our surroundings. This is also a major factor on how a child's learning style is developed. Griswold groups learning styles into 4 major categories: spatial visual, kinetic or movement, language oriented, and logical analytical. Children can be a mixture of learning styles or be dominant in one. A child with diverse learning styles is usually a more flexible learner. Now I will explain each of them a little. The spatial or visual learner needs and likes to visualize things, learns through images, enjoys arts and drawings, reads maps, charts, and diagrams well. A tip for this type of learner would be suggesting using colored pens and encourage visualization whilst reading. The kinetic or movement learner processes knowledge through physical sensations. This means they are highly active, not able to sit still long, communicates with body language and gestures. A useful tip would be using numerous hands-on activities to stimulate thought. The language-oriented learner, they tend to think in words, verbalize concepts rather than having them been shown any other way. A helpful tip would be to save special time to read out loud along with the child. Tape it and hear it over later on. The logical or analytical learner thinks conceptually, likes to learn and explore patterns and relationships between ideas. Try doing science experiments together and encourage the child to question and wonder throughout the process. It is very important for the parent to take concern in the child's learning style to help them and assist not only the child, but the teacher as well on the ways the child can better their learning. This way, the child can have more control over his or her learning and better their education process overall. Like the cultural anthropologist Margaret Mead once said, children must be taught how to think, not what to think.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and follow us on Facebook. So, what's your learning style?